Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. The Sikh Spectrum has come to the city in London today to discuss with Mandip Singh Sohal, who is a financial wizard, and hopefully we're going to interview him in this beautiful building behind me. So let's go in and talk to him. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Today we've come to the financial centre in London, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce Mandip Singh Sohal, who is actually a Chief Compliance Officer, as well as the Finance Officer and the Company Secretary. So first let's do Fateh with Mandip. Mandip, Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Let me welcome you to the show. Actually, it's probably one of the most beautiful buildings in terms of views from an office, as we've got the Shard right outside and the Tower Bridge behind me. And actually, we're on the 13th floor, which was a bit unusual because when I was coming up the lift, I was wondering why this floor actually was on the 13th, because usually the English are very sort of suspicious about this. So let me ask you that first. Is that quite unusual to have 13 floors?
It is unusual, and I'm not sure why this building has it, but we do. And I think maybe the other reason could be because my birthday is also on the 13th, so there's some kind of connection which I feel working on the 13th floor.
Oh, okay. It's because I've caught planes and I've been in hotels, and usually there's a big issue about 13. But hey, I thought that was quite unique here. So, Mandip, let's talk about your growing up and where your education, which university you went, and so on. Why don't you give us a bit of a profile about yourself?
Sure. I mean, I was born in Kenya, Mombasa, and this was before the independence of Kenya. And when Mombasa, Kenya became independent, our father, we decided to go to India and not to stay in Kenya. And we went to India when I was probably about 5 or 6 years old. We stayed there for 6 months or 9 months, and then after that we came to the UK. When we came to the UK, it was a cold November Eve day. I remember getting off the plane, and it was really foggy. So whilst I was really excited to come to the UK, it was really cold. It was really unusual because I'd never seen fog before, coming from a hot climate. But going through, in the first two years, we had to live with our Masi and Masahuni. In those days, when people came from abroad, that's what you did. You lived with your relatives or other people just to make do. And eventually, after about 2 years, my father got a job in a bank in the UK, in London here. And then after that, we got a house, and we started to settle down and actually get integrated into the community. I was 6 years old when we came to this country. We started at infant school locally in Hayes. That's where I used to live, and going on to the follow-on schools from there. Now, the 1970s, at that time when we came into the country, where we bought the house, we were one of 2 Asian families on our street, and I was one of 2 Asian Sikh boys, Bagwala Sikh boys in the school. So as you can imagine, it was quite unusual for someone like me to come there to see. Actually, it's very strange.
So let me ask you, so when you came from India, you were 6. You got any brothers or sisters?
I have one brother, one sister. My brother's actually born in this country. And my sister was born 1 year after me in Kenya as well. So they're both living here as well, and they're working and doing their own thing as well at the moment. So
did you go to school? And just starting from that then. So you must have been one of the first Sikh boys in your primary school.
That's right. One of the first Sikh primary boys in my primary school, and also one of 2 Sikh boys in the secondary school. And that carried for many years. And because of that, obviously you can imagine there's a lot of people asking questions, wondering, when I went to secondary school I tied a bug for the first time, and people used to ask me, what is this? And I've people didn't understand, and also at that time there was a lot of misunderstanding in the English community, and being the area we were, there was a lot of racist attitudes. I don't know if you remember the old National Front Party, the predecessors of the BNP, and they used to be very strong in our area. So a lot of times, you know, my bug's been knocked off a few times. I've been bullied. So, you know, all of these things I've experienced. I know what this feels like, and I've been through all of these. But at the end of the day, you've got to realise that it's going to happen, but you've got to pick yourself up and just carry on and get on with it. And so we went through quite a lot of tough times like that. And my father then decided, actually, you're going to go and learn karate. And so we went to learn karate at the age of 11, I think it was. And as soon as I started learning that, everybody at school knew I was doing karate. So straight away, they just stayed back and never troubled me ever again after that, just from that knowledge of that.
That's interesting, because I know that in the 1970s, 80s, there was always those issues in all parts of the UK, and a lot of our kids did start to learn karate or start to defend themselves, what you see with the gun nowadays. So where did you go to university then after you left school?
After I left school, I went to university in Leicester, and it was actually an eye-opener because I wanted to go somewhere away from home so I can learn to stand up on my own 2 feet as well, and just experience different way of doing things and being independent. Leicester was very good. The course I did there was a combined degree course, which was accounting and mathematics eventually. But my first love was always science and physics, and that's what I really wanted to do when I got to university, and which is what I did start to do. However, when I got there, we had to do some really complex programming in machine code language, which is something I'd never done before, and that really put me off from that career. So I followed a different path after that, and I think Maharaj has just led me to various career choices, which I think I've been fortunate to be in.
Okay, and did you want to go into finance from a young age, or did you think that a lot of our kids are encouraged to science karo, doctor bano, that sort of thing, rather than going into the finance side of things?
I had never thought about going into finance. It was always science, and physics in particular. And nuclear physics in particular, actually. But once you sort of go further along to university, you look at the options, and actually things change.
Okay, so you qualified as an accountant, and I know when I was looking at your profile, you were also part of some sort of Bhangra team. Was that at the university then, I assume?
No, that was actually when I came back from university. Before I went to university, I have to mention this, all my friends were English. Right. So I was very anglicised in the way I did things and thought and so on. And when I went to university, it was complete opposite. All my friends were Asians. And that's really where the interest in my Punjabi culture and Sikh all started from that point in time. And when I came back, I wanted to do something, and so I found a Bhangra team in Southall and joined them, and actually was very successful for the best part of 10 or 15 years, which I was part of that group.
So what about sixth form when you left to go to university? So you had, I don't want to use the word lapsed in Sikhi, but I don't know how else to phrase it actually, but you decided to cut your hair. What was the reason for that?
I cut my hair, and I think it was largely because of the company I was keeping, and it's because all my friends were English, and I was influenced by that society, that culture. And that's how I had no other friends who were Asian or Sikhs at that time who I could talk to on a regular basis. So those were my role models, if you like. So I followed them, basically, to do that. Although my parents used to take us to Gurdwara every Sunday, we used to go through and keep that. And my father, we always used to have Kirtan and Barton in the house all the time. But because of the company I kept, and there was no other choice for me at that time, because I was the only one of two Sikhs in the school.
So when you decided to keep your turban when you came back then from university, was it?
That's right. And that really happened because when I went to university, the opposites happened. All my friends were Asian, and for the first time, I kept company with people from my own culture. And initially, it was a bit of a shock to the system, but as I got used to it, I liked it, and I thought this is actually who I am. And so I didn't put my bug back on straight away, but I started work, and after a couple of years I decided actually if I'm going to do this I might as well do it properly. There's no point being half and half. Either I am a Sikh or I'm not.
And actually, to be honest with you, Mandip, that story I've heard so many times in that age group where people have grown up sort of in a very white, predominantly white school, and my own children are in the same category. When they go to university, they decide they want to mix with their upbringing, and so they gain more about their culture and about the language then. Well, let's move on nicely about your. When did you get married then, and how many children do you have?
I got married in 1992, and my wife is actually from India, and her parents they were here. Her father and parents were here because they used to work in the civil service in London here, and they extended their stay for several years. And the girls, my sister-in-laws, carried on studying as did my wife. I've got 3 children, 2 boys and a girl, and they're at school age at the moment, so they're going through GCSEs. They'll just starting GCSEs now, and hopefully he will progress going further forward.
Okay, and so what I know that you there's a charity that an incident took place in your family where you set up a charity for called the Mandip Singh Charitable Trust for Kidney Patients. What was that in aid of then?
Well, my brother-in-law, my wife's brother, he passed away at a very young age, at the age of 28, diagnosed with kidney failure. He had a kidney transplant, which after 2 years he caught an infection, and he just actually passed away. And that was actually very painful for the whole family. And so going on from that, we decided actually we should do something in his name, in his memory. And I helped my father-in-law to set up the Mandip Singh Charitable Trust for Kidney Patients to help kidney patients in India or places where they don't have resources, to help them to get operations, to help them go forward and just try to live normal lives. And it's run, and it's not a very big charity, it's a small thing, family-run charity, and we just get a few requests coming in all the time, which we can handle and manage at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think more Sikhs have started to do that, where they do it, for example, in their villages or a link that they have. I think that's great work. Let me ask you then a question regarding this word called Toastmasters, which a lot of people may not know what it means. And I know that you're a former member of the Toastmasters, so why don't you explain what that is actually?
Well, that's interesting you ask that. I mean, when you say Toastmasters, people normally think it's these people who stand on the town centre and do crying out, yo, yo ho, and that actually is a form of Toastmastering. But the form of Toastmastering that I did is actually a public speaking club. So you go there, learn public speaking, you go in a friendly environment, and they help you along with your speech and the sort of the art of public speaking, if you like. And it's a program that you follow. It's a structured program that you follow over a period of 10 speeches, after which you get a badge and you're evaluated formally.
So why did they nickname you Super Mandip?
That's also very interesting because when I went there, I volunteered to become a member of the committee. So I took on the vice presidency. I became the treasurer. I did some marketing for the club, and because I did everything in the same way as I would do with my office in my work life, in the same kind of standard and so on, I was quite surprised that people outside of this environment don't have those kind of skills. And because I could do them so quickly, straight away to a high standard, they just thought this was amazing and just named me Super Mandip from that.
Okay. Actually, I want to talk about the work that you're doing at the moment. I mean, you work for, as I've already mentioned, that you're the CCO, the FO and the company secretary, but it's for the First International Advisors LLC. Why don't you give us a little bit about the company that you work for now, and exactly what it does, and sort of what, you're not an accountant, are you, as such? So what is it that regarding this company, and how long has it been trading and that sort of stuff?
I am an accountant by qualification, but as you said, I do very little of that nowadays. The company, what we do, we are a fund management company, so we manage client assets, and largely our clients are pension funds, mutual funds, unit trust type of vehicles, and large corporate pools of money. So that's all we do. And we're different to other type of fund management companies in that we only look at what's known as fixed income securities, i.e. debt instruments. So where companies issue loan stocks, loan notes, we invest in those type of instruments. This is different from stocks and shares, where people normally go and buy on the stock market. So it's a much more specialist area. and there's a lot more mathematics involved in the way we calculate our returns and so on. And we are registered with the Financial Services Authority in the UK and also in the US with the Securities and Exchange Commission. So my role here as a compliance officer, and I'm registered with the FSA to do my role, is to make sure that we comply with the financial rules of the regulators in the UK and the US, internal company policies and guidelines, making sure that we comply with what the client wants us to do. So I'm checking to make sure the people out there who are doing the trading, that they're trading within the guidelines set by the client, so we don't breach any of their contracts. So that's part of the role of what I do. And being a multifaceted role, it allows me to get involved in other areas such as systems implementations, where I can advise on when we take on new clients. I get involved in that part and just I can advise on how we can market to people and so on.
So, I mean, you're one of the largest banks in the States, aren't you?
The company First International Advisors is a wholly owned subsidiary of Wells Fargo Bank, which is the largest bank in the US by market capitalisation, stock market capitalisation. It is the fourth largest bank by number of assets they have. It is one of what I would call one of the big four US retail banks. It has 300,000 or so employees and something like 76 million customers worldwide.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's it's obviously got a lot of assets. But previous to this job, you also worked for a Jewish family, I think, that you'd mentioned. What was that? Which company was that?
This was it was a private family company for the Rothschild family, which is one of the wealthiest families in the world. And I had the fortune of working with them for 10 years. And working there was actually an eye-opener and a real experience, because it gave me insight on not only how they do business, but also the types of structures and schemes and plans that they put in place to make things work effectively and efficiently, and also giving him a real insight to how the Jewish community does business. So I have very good experience and first-hand experience of how they work, and it's something that I would never have got any other way.
Right. Okay, let's move on to some questions about on the Sikhi side. Whenever I've interviewed people, I've always looked at right? This is the work that you do, and it's a beautiful building, and you've gone up, in terms of the ladder, in terms of work progression and staffing and all that sort of stuff. But when it comes down to people, what are you doing on the Sikhi ground? So, why don't you give me some sort of idea? I assume you're not involved in the local Gurdwara politics, being so busy and so on. Is there something that you do for Sikhs or not?
Have done in the past. I've been involved in very early on, maybe in my sort of career or my life. We started getting involved in the Simran group at the Gurdwara in Hounslow. Every Friday we used to go there and help the kids there, just to mentor them and bring them up and just try to take them further forward. From there we started the same kind of thing at my local Gurdwara in Harrow, and we started a Friday Simran for young children, just to do a basic Simran and try to do donations that we've tried to do with them. So those kind of things we've tried. We've also tried to do the star competition in a local Gurdwara for Vaisakhi, and that was met with some success as well. So there's always things that I'm trying to do like that, but with a family and things like that, of course, there's the amount of commitment you can give and time you can give is always going to be restricted.
Talking about Simran, I mean, I know there's one project that you are involved in, which is only recently started, called Simran in the City project. Why don't you explain what was the reason for starting that Simran in the City project?
Simran is very important to me, and I've always done Simran and my Nithanam, and it's part of my Nithanam which I consider. So I've always wanted to do Simran in the city, so I always thought actually it would be really good to get professional Sikhs in the city who may not have contact with this, to start a program here, just doing a very simple and basic Simran, just to get them interested, get them connected to each other. But it's just to get the professional Sikhs in London to do Simran once a week, maybe in the heart of London, the financial centre of London. It's just something that appeals to me, really.
And so where do you do this Simran then? Surely not in the offices.
Well, that would be nice. We did explore that possibility, but there's a church not very far from here called St Ethelburgers. And what they've done, they've built a Mongolian yurt in the garden at the back, which is like an hexagonal tent, a Mongolian tent, made out of cloth. And it's about 25 feet across all sides, and it's carpeted. So that area is something that we've managed to book out, and we can go there every Tuesday. We go there now lunchtimes to do our Simran. And we had the second program of Simran today, and actually the feedback has been very, very positive.
And how many people from the city attend that then?
We had 10 people today, so it's a start, and I think if we continue to do it on a regular basis, more and more people will join in, and we'll bigger and bigger core. Then maybe we can try to do it once in the evening, maybe 2 times a week. But let's see how it develops and be completely flexible about it.
And that's weekly Simran, is it?
That's a weekly Simran.
Okay. No, I'll have to come and attend one of those next time I'm in the city myself, just to see what it feels like. I quite like this idea about being in a tent, especially if it's a sort of a Mongolian tent style and hexagonal and so on. One of the other projects that I know that you've also been involved in is actually the Khanda Poppy project, which started a couple of weeks ago, really, and I know that you developed the web page and so on. So how is that going at the moment?
It seems to be going very well. We've had a fantastic response from the Sangat. Poppies that we've put on and been advertised, people have been buying them, and we're running short of poppies. We've also had some very good comments, and people calling from Holland asking for poppies, for example. There's been one Englishman who's been on the website, and he just came back, and after he's read all the sacrifices of the Sikhs that in the First War, he just put a simple line, "Thank you." And I thought that was such a nice thing to say, and a nice way to sort of recognise the efforts that we're trying to make.
Yeah, I mean, I think that project needs to be, it's only the second year that it started, and I was really pleased that you were actually involved in that, I think. So anybody that can do a little bit, you'll find that these projects do start to move on. What about, long term for Sikhs? I'm wondering that, you're in the city with your background and what you're trying to do. I was reading somewhere that there was a documentary I was watching, was actually a speech by someone that said that in the next 50 years, a number of gurdwaras would be closing because the congregations are going down and we're not going to be able to finance them. So what do you think the vision for the Sikhs living here in the future would be if suddenly gurdwaras are going to close down? Apart from maybe the very big ones will stay open. Have you got some sort of ideas about what you think, which way the Sikhi Prachar should be going?
I do think there is a lot we can do, but I think there is no overnight fix to what's happening. And really what we need to be looking at is sitting back and thinking about a longer term vision, maybe a 50-year plan, a 50-year vision. And that should involve looking at all the different areas. You've got different streams, I would call them. You've got what's happening in the Gurdwaras and how to deal with that. But then you've also got lots of issues which we're facing as a Sikh community. And those are not going to be solved overnight. And we don't have an infrastructure that can actually deal with them effectively. So there needs to be a much broader vision that maybe a group of professionals, a group of analytical thinkers can sit back and just bury themselves away and come up with some kind of vision and a plan to take that forward. The other side that I think people will find, there's a lot of Sikh organisations and Gurdwara have problem with funding. And the models that we use in funding currently, they're fine up to a certain level, up to a certain number of sangat, but after that they don't work. And so really we need to think about a sustainable self-financing model that can finance a vision that we can put in forward. And it's something like that I think we need to be looking at and developing and thinking about. For example, what's wrong with, we're looking at Sikhs in the community, and maybe we need to go back to our basics and decide and think, what as Sikhs should we be doing? And we all talk about the issues a lot, which is right and proper. But do we go back to the basics and think, what is the message that Guru Nanak Dev Ji gave? And the message is it just for Sikhs or is it for the whole of humanity? And if it is, then we as Sikhs, what are we doing to promote that? There was a conference of world religions, the very first one, which was held in Boston, probably around 20 years ago now. And sare utte baithe, sare prachar karde Sikhi to apne religions vaste dharm maade. And the conclusion was that Sikhi was the best religion, the most egalitarian religion. But it's in the hands of the wrong people. ਜਿਹੜੇ ਗੋਰੇ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਜੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਹੱਥ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਸੀ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਾਰੀ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਵਿੱਚ ਪ੍ਰਗਟ ਕਰ ਦੇਣੀ ਸੀ ਸਿੱਖੀ. So if you can see that other people from outside can see Sikhi in that way, there's something that we need to be doing as Sikhs ourselves to think about that, and maybe and for myself I see that, you know, if it's for the whole of humanity, as a Sikh I've got a mission to my Guru, and that mission is not only just to be an ambassador but also to help spread Guru Nanak Dev Ji's message to the wider Sangat and the wider community. And so there's lots of ways you could do that, you know, and for example, you know, what's wrong with having a Sikh-free hospital in, say, Mecca, for example, as a thought? You know, that would put the word of your religion there, and put in your principles there, and people start recognising it. You know, what's wrong with having sports stars who are sponsored by the Sangat, or in some kind of way, or through a vision? Why can't we have them? They're becoming role models. You know, we don't have politicians. We don't have enough Sikh politicians. We don't have. We have all the skills and professionals there, but we don't walk those corridors of power. We don't network like other communities do. The Jewish community, for example. We don't put in place institutions and structures within the communities we live in. And by doing things like that, you can suddenly create influence. And with that influence, you can do a lot more than you can by just trying to take up a cause and protesting about it, because that takes you so far.
But what about all the various groups that we do have, whether they're, for example, in the city? I know there's a Sikhs in the city, Sikhs and the city, Sikhs on the city, you know, there's so many of them. I mean, for any cause, somehow we seem to generate a new Sikh group that's starting. I mean, there is so much of that happening, I think. But I don't really, I don't know how to sort of put them all together so that they could all work collectively. They've all got their own little agendas. I'm not sure how, you know, from 50 years from now, what I could really say would help unless we can all sort of at least come on one platform. Do you think there's any chance of Sikhs getting together rather than, you know, setting up their own little groups and causes and so on?
I don't think we can ever actually stop that, and I think when people do that, they're doing it because they have an interest, they have a need and desire to do something, and they should do that. And I think we should encourage people to do that, because some people will do things and they will do it really, really well, which I couldn't do, for example, at a level I couldn't do, or you or anybody else. And so those kind of things, we should let them run, and they become little gems. But I think if you're looking at a longer term vision, then really you can create, you know, from my experience of building companies from a small level to a large level, you always get to a point where there's a critical mass. And when you get to a point where there's a critical mass, it allows you to suddenly influence other groups and people and start creating a following almost behind in your trail. And that's a kind of movement we've got to do. I mean, there needs to be some kind of what I would call a paradigm shift in thinking in Sikhi itself, how we can take it to the next level and just move Sikhi along.
Actually, that's an interesting word you just used, or a phrase I should say, the paradigm shift. I mean, actually I'm not sure that most people actually even understand what you just said, because the only reason I understand it is because just a couple of weeks ago I was studying that, looking at how people are perceiving others as opposed to how I look at them. And there was a good YouTube clip about explaining that concept. Maybe you want to elaborate on that a little bit.
Let me explain what I mean by that. Back in the Middle Ages, everybody thought the world was flat. And if you went far enough, you would fall over the edge. Now, everyone thought that, so nobody would venture beyond certain borders or go and sail past certain points, because they were so scared of falling off the edge of the world and then going to oblivion. Until Christopher Columbus came along, he sailed across all the way around to the US, to the Americas. He proved the world was round. That suddenly changed the way people thought about the world. Now, that's what a paradigm shift is. And I think, from what I see what's happening, this is my only personal opinion, from what I see that's happening in our dharam, is that we are looking at the world, it's still a flat world. We've got to move on to the next stage where we discover the world is actually round. And that's what I mean by paradigm shift. There needs to be a change in thinking. something, a trigger, will cause that to happen.
So we're going to finish the program now, and I want to thank Mandip Singh for sharing his views and ideas with us, and I hope it's been interesting for the Sangat to listen to. So with that in mind, Mandip, let's both do Fateh. Waheguru Ji Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.